Voluntary committed cost sharing is not required by the sponsor, but it's demonstrated in the proposal. And so this is a choice that an institution makes to put cost sharing in, and we can do this in a few different ways. We'll talk more later about sort of decisions to engage in cost sharing, but for something to be voluntary committed cost sharing, it should be demonstrated in the proposal. I would note here that you may have instances, these are relatively rare, where someone or an organization generally elects to put cost sharing in at maybe a revised budget stage. That's very unusual, but if it is documented and presented to the sponsor at any sort of point in the process and gets incorporated, we would view that as something that would go sort of move to the line of voluntary and committed cost sharing. And I make that note as I'm going to discuss voluntary uncommitted and the differences there in one moment. So voluntary committed cost sharing is sometimes referenced in the award document, but whether or not it's referenced explicitly in the award document, unless there's been a further exchange or dialogue with the sponsor on this, documented dialogue, it must be properly documented and tracked for cost accounting and compliance purposes. And so when you think about voluntary committed cost sharing and compare it to mandatory cost sharing, you'll see that there's a lot of similarities, generally speaking, but where the similarities get the most clear is once you have an award in place, because then in both scenarios you need to make sure you are monitoring, tracking, documenting, and reporting on the cost share. With a voluntary situation, you may have less of an ongoing requirement to report on cost sharing in terms of how you're doing. That could be true. You may even have a situation where you don't actually have to report formally on the cost sharing at all, but you do need to make sure that you are tracking on it.